Hello there, I'm Vigalius, and I'm gonna... Sounds good, Alan, do that. Hello there, I'm Vigalius, and I'm gonna review Wicked. Do I look like the target demographic for Wicked? Yes, but I am going to do it by special request. And to be honest with you, I was going to review when it came out, because I do have a lot to say about it. It's mostly that. Thanks for watching. But I do want to review it. I do want to review this movie because I do have a lot to say about it. Now, I will say I am not the target audience for this. I don't like musicals, personally speaking. I don't really know anything about... I want to say Alice in Wonderland. Is that the one with the... I don't think it's the one with that. The Hearts, the Queen of Hearts and the Rabbit, or is that the Yellow Brick Road? I don't... One of them. I don't know anything about this stuff. I really don't. But I watched it because that was my partner's birthday. Oh, and because I super wanted to watch it. And I do want to talk about it because it exhibits a lot of issues and a lot of good. And I'm very conflicted on it because I do think that there's a lot of good with the movie, but I think every time it's like, oh, but this is good. Also, but this too, and I want to talk about that in this movie, in this review rather, and I want to kick things off with the good. I want to say firstly that I think, yes, the set design was very good. I think the sets were designed very well. I do think there were a couple of issues here and there. Here we go. Okay, so this is separated between a school and a city. I think the school sometimes felt just a little bit too small and a little bit too narrow at times. It felt more like a sort of like big castle where a bunch of people are hanging out rather than a school. And we definitely didn't spend enough time in the city to get a feel for it. But I do think what we did see was quite good. I liked what we saw of those locations. I think they were very well designed. I also think that a lot of the time the cinematography was fantastic. Really, really good. Good use of shots. I think we saw good choreography, but I'm not sure. But the physical performances and the way that they were integrated with the shots themselves was very good and flowed very well. Added to the fact that the color was used very well here, a good use of palette, and I like the way that the director was very bold with the use of color, sometimes really exacerbating it and exaggerating it. I think sometimes even in post, just using that space and the characters within that space was very expertly done. And speaking of which, I think the performances as a whole were very good. The standout was the lead, Elizabeth, the green one. She was incredible. A really, really excellent performance, and I just honestly think everyone was great as a whole. A lot of people have spoken about how good Ariana Grande was in the movie, and I think there's... Wow, I can't stop burping today. And I think there's a couple of things that people who think that should consider. I'm not saying it was a bad performance. I'm really not. But I will say, do consider the notion that, hey, Ariana Grande was an actress and is an actress and always has been, was an actress first and was a pop singer second. So when you say, oh yeah, she was actually really good, what you're saying is this professional actress was actually really good at acting. Great, good. That's like saying my mechanic fixed my car. Can't believe it. It's gonna happen. She is a professional actress and she's gonna give a good performance. But also, look, this isn't a knock against anyone aside from maybe the writer of the original film, the stage show rather. This is not a knock against the writers, the directors, Ariana herself. I do think she gave a great performance. I really do, and it was very convincing and very funny and very interesting. But that one character was done really well, and she didn't have to play anything else. I mean, you look at her against Alcabeth, that character has such a range of emotion, so much to play with, so much clay to mold, whereas Grande was just like the ditzy, airheaded, honestly character that she's been in everything that I've ever seen her in, and so I don't think she really had all that much to play with, and so it allowed her to explore that character really well. The character was great, the performance was great, but it wasn't varied in any way, I wouldn't say. And now that we're on to the negatives, I want to talk about the things I didn't like about this film. Firstly, just personally speaking, I didn't like any of the songs, and I felt that there were too many of them. But on a more objective sense, I think the biggest issue with this film that I had was it has horrendous pacing, and I think that's why a lot of people came away from it saying that they were bored. I don't know if I was a little bit bored, but I don't know if I was that bored. But I think the reason a lot of people felt bored was because this film has atrocious pacing. It balances things very poorly, and very, in my opinion, incorrectly. I think the biggest demonstration of this is that they spend so much time in the school getting to know each other and wanting to be popular, dude. They really wanted to they spent a lot of time wanting to be popular, and they talk about like how there's this grand wizard, and but what if you get a letter from him? You'll never meet him, you'll never get a letter from him, and he has like this Voldemort air to him, other than the fact that he's not evil. It's Jeff freaking Goldblum. They talk about the grand wizard and like it's this crazy guy, and the journey there, and you go to the city and you meet him, and then they hop on the train and they're there, and there's the Grand Wizard. Nothing more to it. That's it. That's the end of that. Not to mention the fact that it's not really pacing, but this film ends on a complete cliff edge. I've never seen anything like it. I've seen plenty of two-part films, but this really has no conclusion, no real third act. This film doesn't have a third act, in my opinion, whereas even with films like Harry Potter, the last Harry Potter Part 1, or Infinity War, or I don't know, one of the Lord of the Rings, all of these films that are multi-part, at least you have a third act. There's no real third act here, although you do get a big crescendo at the end, so I suppose that's something. But I just think the film spends far too long focusing on love triangles and being popular and things like that, which would be fine, honestly, if that was the key focus of the film. But let's not forget that there was a lot more going on, a lot more to care about, and a lot more in terms of identity for the main character. I understand that a large part of this film is about the identity of the lead, but I just think that she had bigger demons to face, bigger battles to face, and we spent maybe a little bit too much time focusing on what other people were experiencing, in a way that felt kind of ancillary, when the runtime is so long and you're packing this into two films. I don't want to feel like you're padding things out, and I really did during this film. A lot of it did feel like padding, and like I said, I felt as though a lot of the runtime is spent. So much of the runtime is spent singing what just happened. And this comes down to my issue with musicals, personally speaking. I know a lot of people love musicals, and I know people who, if you stumble across this review, you probably do like musicals, and that's great. I wish I could. But I can't get over the fact that it really suffers from the singing about what just happened syndrome, where it's like, I just picked up a can. Whereas in a regular film, it'd be like, he picked up a can. He might drink from it, whatever, Chekhov's gun. He might drink from it. He might smash it over someone's head. And then, there's Dwayne Johnson. In Wicked, it's like, he picked up the can. And then he threw it at a fan. That fan will yell if he drinks the can. And no one can tell if he's really a fan. Like, it's just over-explaining. And what I don't get about this, and I'm kind of getting into my rant against this type of film, is that, like, if you had dialogue in a film like this, in a film with a runtime so long, where I said, here's a can, and they said, that's a can, yeah, this guy just gave me a can, it's a can, hey everyone, he just handed me a can, and you spent 5 minutes doing that, it would receive so much criticism and everyone would hate it. So I just don't know why we accept it in musicals like this. I just don't get it. Overall, all in all, I know I've criticised it a lot, but I do think there's a lot of good here. The performances, being as good as they are, can carry the film for you. And I, at times, did care about the interpersonal relationships, and I did like the characters that I saw on screen, particularly the lead. I think the lead was really, really great, and very, I was very empathetic to them, and I cared, and that's a good thing. I would never go back to this film ever, and I was at times slightly bored, and I think the pacing was atrocious. So let me put a score on this. And I think that's, given all things considered, pretty fair, and that's about it. I definitely think if you're into musicals with show tunes, this will be right up your alley, but for me, it wasn't for me, and that's fine. I think I am recording this on International Women's Day. I'm not sure if this is okay.
The PlayStation is only $149, and you can also get leading titles.